So, this is me again, Cord. This is Cord again, and this is the continuation of the biblical summary series. Um, right now we on meat, so this is the second topic on meat, which is confusion of faces. What is confusion of faces? It means that every Israelite is not gonna look like John Shaft. You know what I'm saying? Because yes, Judah is the American black man, but Judah's seed has been scattered all around the world, which we're going to find out in the scriptures today. So not all Judah is going to look like an American black Negro. You know what I'm saying? Because Judah and all the rest of the tribes, they have been scattered among the heathen, and they reproduce with those women, and through generation, you know, they see mixing with the heathen. You can lose the look of, you know, what Judah normally looks like. Normally, you can lose that look by mixing with the heathen, but it doesn't matter about what the child looks like, because as long as the seed is Israel, come from an Israelite, come from one of the 12 tribes, that child is an Israelite. That child is a child of God. It doesn't matter about the looks. It doesn't matter about the color. You know, because the only thing that matters, what makes you an Israelite, is the seed of your father. As long as your father is one, as long as your father's seed or gene or genealogy come from one of the 12 tribes of Judah, I mean Israel, excuse me, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, then you are Israelite. And we'll find that out today. So let's get right into it. Go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. And if some of these videos is dark, I don't know, I'm doing this on my little laptop, so, you know, just bear with them. The important thing is not to see me or look at me. The important thing is the words that I speak, you know what I'm saying, in the scriptures. So, as long as you can hear the words, that's all that matters. Okay. All right. So yeah, go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, please. King James Version. And it reads, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. Continue. Next verse. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Right, the sons of God is the Israelites before they was called Israelites. You know, that's Israelite men. Saw the daughters of men. That's the daughters of the heathen, the daughters of the nation. You know what I'm saying? That they were fair, that they were beautiful, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Right. So they that show you from the beginning, Israel has been into these heathen women, man. Israel has been into the women of the other nations. You got brothers that like so-called Chinese women. Uh, You know what I'm saying? They really into Asian women. You got brothers that like Indian women. You know what I'm saying? You got brothers that like white girls and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. In the kingdom, you're gonna have those women as concubines. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Uh, you know, I like me personally. I like Indian women. Man. You know what I'm saying? You know, from India and stuff, and Middle Eastern women, especially the brown skin ones. You know, I find them very attractive. You know, so the point of that is the point is that Israelite men have been attracted to the heathen women from the beginning, and they have made marriages and children with them um, since the beginning, man, since the ancient world. So there's nothing new underneath the sun, basically. Verse 3. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Right, because his God really didn't want Israel to mix with the other. Well, I ain't gonna say he really didn't want to mix. The reason why God was always kind of against it, basically, is because he didn't want Israel to take on the customs of those other people by mixing with them. Meaning, start worshiping their gods and start worshiping their idols and all that stuff. So that's the mistake Solomon made. Solomon had 1,000 wives, and he had many concubines too, and he had a lot of women out of other nations he dealt with. And eventually, with all the wisdom that Solomon had, those women, was able to make him go off and make him start uh, worshiping the idols of the other nations, basically. You know, because of his women, man. You know what I'm saying? It made him go off, and go off by starting to worship them other gods and stuff, and because of his wives, man, because of the women. You know, women have power through sex, and they can influence men greatly. Sex is a form of power. You know, and women have that. They can influence men to do whatever they want through that energy, through sexual energy, sexual persuasion. You know? Women have men kill other men every day because of that. You know, so really, the Lord did not want Israel. That's the reason why He didn't want that, because He didn't want us to. He didn't want Israelites to worship the other idols and false gods of the heathen. Basically, that's why. So that's why that didn't please the Lord. You know, okay, let's continue. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, meaning they had sex, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown, right? Men of great popularity, uh, like recently, you got this dude in the news on all over social media named Andrew Tate, right? And when you look at Andrew Tate, you would think his father was a white man. He don't. He looked just like a white guy, man. But actually, his father is a black man named black chess player named Emory Tate, and that's who his father is. And Andrew Tate is a man of renown, a man of great popularity. You know, so, you know, that's what that means. You know what I'm saying? Those people, those mixed children, so-called mixed children, they was popular back in the day, man, because they had a unique look to them and all that stuff. You know, and they stood out, man, and they became men of renown. You know, renown for their beauty. You know, basically popular and something different to look at, basically. You know, basically like a talk of the town, basically. Men of renown, men of popularity, men of great reputation. Something to behold, basically. You know, okay. Just the point, the reason why I brought this up was basically to show that Israel been mixing it up with the heathen women and producing children since the beginning, and they just like they doing nowadays. And so it is what it is. Okay. Um, oh yeah, to prove that an Israelite is an Israelite, regardless of their color or look or what they look like, as long as they are the seed of Israel. Go to Numbers chapter 1 verse 18. Numbers chapter 1 verse 18, please. Numbers chapter 1 verse 18, and it says, "And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names, from 20 years old and upward, by their polls." Right, it's by the father. Your pedigree is by your father. Whatever seed you come from, that's what you is. And so you got Edomites that look like uh, niggas, basically, or Mexicans, or wetbacks. Well, you know what I'm saying? You know, so-called niggas, so-called wetbacks. You got Edomites that look just like that, and then you got you got Israelites that look like so-called crackers or white people, or you know what I'm saying, or like the other man, like a Chinese, like a gook or something. You think this a gook that you looking at, but this is actually an Israelite. That's why you can't judge by the flesh, man. You gotta go by spirit, by the spirit, man. You gotta go by the spirit. You can't just judge somebody by the flesh, man. This thing is deeper than that, man. So that's why this is meat, man, because this is deeper. This is a meat topic because it's deeper than Just what you see is not what you get. You can't judge a book by its cover necessarily. You know, so you gotta have an open mind about this thing when you judging people, man. So, and that's why going back to the men of renown, you got dudes uh, like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is a man of renown, a very famous man, a legend. That's what I mean. These dudes became legends, men of renown, men of a high status. You know, like Bruce Lee. A lot of brothers believe uh, that Bruce Lee was an Israelite, and I believe it too because of his style and swag. You don't see that amongst so-called Chinamen or Moab. You know what I'm saying? You don't see no more Bruce Lees like that amongst Moab. You don't see that a common man like that, like Bruce Lee, that had that swag and style to him, like Bruce Lee had. You know, because he was something different. He was a Israelite. Man. That's why Jacob is the one that's got that style, man, that swag. You know, because that's the spirit that God gave him to be the greatest. You know, it's all about the seed. Look at basketball players like Blake Griffin. Look what Blake Griffin can do on the court, and then you look at him, but he comes from a black man. His mother is white, but it don't matter because it's all about the seed. Man. You know, so the woman is just the earth, basically, that the seed grows from. Your mother is just the earth that you grew from, grew out of. You know what I'm saying? She's just the ground that you grew out of when your father planted you in her. You know, but your father, he is who you really is. Whatever his tribe is, that's what you really is, man. You know, so you got black women uh, being with white men, making babies with white men. Those is not Israelite children. Those is heathens, man. Those is Edomite children, even though they might look black. Because the genes that come from the mother or whatever. But it's about the genes that come from the father. It's all about the father. That's what it's about. Remember that. Okay. So to prove that Israelites will look like all the nations basically because they've been scattered there by God. Let's prove that in the scriptures. Go to Ezekiel. No, yeah, go to Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 19, please. Ezekiel 36 and 19. Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 19. Okay. King James Version. This is Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 19. And this is the Lord speaking. I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the countries, according to their way and according to their doings, I judged them. Right. The reason why the Lord scattered you scattered Israel amongst the nations is because our ancestors did wickedness, and he kicked them out of their land and scattered them among the heathens in the heathen lands out of anger, basically, because they disobeyed him. That's what God do, man. So when he get angry at Israel, he kick them out of the land and make them serve those that hate them, since they won't serve him. He make them serve those which God loved Israel. You know, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. You know, God loved Jacob, but when he don't obey, then he kicks them out of the land and makes them uh, worship. Well, not worship, serve the other heathen nations. Man. That's what he do, because they won't serve him, so he make them serve their enemies. That's we already learned that in prior teachings. So that let's read that again, man. Just to nail it home. Ezekiel 36 and verse 19. And I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the countries, according to their ways and according to their doings. I judged them. Right, that was God's judgment against them to scatter them among the heathens. That was his judgment. But just like he did that, he's gonna gather them also. The elect. He's gonna gather the elect. And so you're gonna have some of the 1/3. This doesn't apply to the 2/3. 2/3 is not gonna be gathered. But the 1/3 shall be gathered. And some of the 1/3 are gonna look like the other nations. You know what I'm saying? Because they have lived amongst these people and reproduced with these people, and so they're gonna look like these people. You know, eventually through generation after generation, they could end up looking just like these people. You know what I'm saying? But they still are the seed of Israel. So they are Israelite. And the Lord is going to gather them and accept them all the same. Okay? Let's prove that. Ezekiel 36, same chapter. Ezekiel 36 and 24. Go to verse 24. Ezekiel 36, verse 24. Hold on. Try to put it up on my phone. Okay. This is Ezekiel 36 and 24. And it reads, For this is God speaking, for I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. That's simple right there. So he scattered them because of his anger, but in his mercy, he's going to gather the 1/3 from all over the world, you know, and put them back into the land of Israel. And then no matter how they look, and they're going to look like the other nations, you know what I'm saying? They're going to look like the other nations, you know. You know, it's all good, man. When the devil try to mess with you, you just gotta keep fighting. You know, so this life is a fight, man. Even when the devil is messing with you, man. You know, his little goons or whatever, they mess with you. You just gotta keep fighting. You know. Anywho, man. gathered from all nations. Okay, we prove that. Now go for the final scripture of this lecture. Go to Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. Okay, this is Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. And after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and people, and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, and palms in their hands. Right. Notice what it said. It said, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and people, and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hand. Right, these are those Israelites that's been scattered among the heathen, man. This doesn't mean that the heathen will be saved. The only salvation is of the Jews. Salvation is of Israel only. Excuse me. Salvation is of Israel only, man. To qualify for salvation, you have to be of the seed of Israel, and you have to be part of the elect right now, because God is not dealing with the 2/3, though they be Israelites of the seed of Israelites. You know, so this is talking about out of. I read again. After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and people. The Lord just told you in Ezekiel that He was going to gather Israel out of all the countries, and this is what it's talking about. This is what this is talking about. This is backing that up. These are people. These are Israelites that look like the other nations, because they have mixed with those nations, but they are still of the seed. Their fathers go back to Israel, so they are accepted just the same. Regardless of how they color or regardless of how they look. You know, and that's the understanding that you need to get, man. Of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands, and cried with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne and unto the Lamb. Right. Those are the people of the Lord. Those are the elect. Those are the 1/3, and that make it. So no matter how you look, as long as you are the seed of Israel, as long as you are the seed of Israel, and what I'm saying, as long as you part of the elect, that's all that matter. That's all that matter. Uh, so yeah, uh, that concludes this lesson today, man. I hope you learned something from today's lecture, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Goodbye.